She was yelling before I even opened my door. "You can't block the gate, there's a wedding here tomorrow." I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. My boots were still muddy from feeding the horses. And there she stood, floral clipboard in hand, pointing at my land like it belonged to her. "This is private property," I said, trying to keep calm. "I don't know who told you anything about a wedding, but I sure didn't approve it." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she snapped, pushing her sunglasses up like some kind of royal. "The HOA board voted and we agreed your ranch was the perfect rustic aesthetic for the McCarthy's big day." I blinked. "The what board?" She clicked her tongue, clearly annoyed at my ignorance. "HOA, Homeowners Association. We sent out notices. You should check your mailbox sometime." Then she turned and barked at two young guys carrying folding chairs toward my barn. "Over there, and no scuffing the paint on that red door, it's vintage." I stood there, stunned. That barn door was hand-painted by my wife before she passed. No one touched it but me. I walked fast toward them. "Put those down. Now." The taller guy hesitated, looking at Karen. She gave him a sharp nod like she owned him. "Don't listen to him. He's just the caretaker. We got this. Place for the weekend, it's all cleared." "I own this place," I said, raising my voice. "You need to get off my land before I call the sheriff." That made her laugh, loud and fake. "Oh, you're calling the cops? Good luck. I already have a permit and a signed usage letter. From the HOA, you don't want to go up against us." She waved a paper in my face like it was some holy scripture. I grabbed it. It was typed on plain white printer paper with a fake-looking HOA logo and a signature at the bottom that just said Karen M. No last name, no stamp, just bold letters saying, "Event approved, ranch reserved, June 10th, 12. "You forged." "This," I said, looking her dead in the eyes. She didn't flinch. "We do what's best for the community. If you're not cooperative, we'll report you for non-compliance." I was still staring at the paper when a delivery truck rolled up the driveway. Flowers, tents, catering equipment, like a full-blown wedding invasion. And I realized something then. This wasn't just some misunderstanding, this was planned, deliberate, calculated, and they had no idea who they were messing with. "All right," I said quietly. "You want to play dirty? Game on." By nightfall, my entire ranch looked like a Pinterest board exploded all over it. White tents, fairy lights, even a fake wooden arch right where my granddad's memorial stone stood. That was the last straw. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. Went inside, shut the door, and grabbed the small lockbox from under the kitchen sink. Inside was my late wife's wedding rings and a flash drive. She used to handle legal stuff for the sheriff's office before she passed. That drive had every land deed, document, and drone footage we ever needed. She always said, "One day, someone's going to test us, just make sure you're ready when they do." I plugged it into my laptop and pulled up the footage. There it was, Karen and two men from her so-called HOA walking onto my property 3 days ago, measuring the barn like they already owned it. No permission, no conversation, just trespassing, clear as day. Next, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "You still work heavy rigs?" I asked. My buddy Ray grunted on the other end. "If the price is right." "I don't need the price to be right. I need the timing to be perfect. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Bring the big one." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Someone pissed you off bad, huh?" "They scheduled a wedding on my land," I said flatly. "Didn't even ask." "Oh, damn. All right, I'll bring the jaws." Next morning came fast. I barely slept. And right at 7, the rumble of a flatbed truck echoed through the valley. Karen was already out front, wearing a ridiculous pink suit with a headset on like she was directing a Hollywood movie. "What is that?" she shouted, running toward the gate. Ray stepped out of the truck, all 6'4" of him, beard wild and dusty. "Demolition services," he said casually. Karen's jaw dropped. "Demolition? Are you insane? There's a wedding in 3 hours." "That's funny," Ray said, pretending to look around. "All I see is an illegal event on someone else's land, and I've got orders to clear anything that doesn't belong here." Karen turned beet red. "You can't do this. You'll ruin everything." I finally walked out onto the porch. Calm, steady. "I'm not ruining anything," I said. "I'm just taking back what's mine." She tried to argue, stumbling over her words. "The community will press charges. This is public use under HOA." I held up the drone footage. "Try me. You trespassed, forged documents, and illegally held an event on private property. And guess what? This entire ranch sits outside your HOA boundary lines. You don't own a damn inch of it." Her face went pale, real pale. And then I added, just loud enough for the wedding planner to hear, "By the way, the bride's family? I called them last night, showed them everything. They already pulled the plug." Karen's lips parted, but no sound came. Out. Ray just smiled, put the rig in gear, and said, "Startin' demolition in 10. She panicked. Wait, you can't. This is thousands of dollars worth of decor." She ran toward the tent, waving her arms like a maniac, trying to get the caterers and workers to move faster, but they just stood there, confused and frozen. A few had already started loading their vans after I sent the footage to the bride's family. No one wanted to get caught in the middle of whatever storm was brewing. Ray kept counting. 8, 7, 6. Karen bolted toward him, heels sinking in the dirt, and planted herself in front of the machine. "I swear I will sue you into the ground if you touch one tent pole. I have authority. I'm the HOA president." I took a step forward and raised my phone. "And I have you on camera trespassing, lying, and impersonating a government official. Oh, and by the way, you're not even on the HOA board anymore." Her mouth twitched. "What are you talking about?" "I checked with the county," I said, holding up the actual documentation. "You were removed last year after 3 complaints of abuse of power and harassment. You never told anyone." Karen's eyes widened. Her voice cracked. That's not true. I'm the only one who—" "You don't own anything here," I cut in. "Not this land, not this barn, not even that little clipboard of yours." She was still standing there, stunned, when a sheriff's cruiser pulled up the dirt road. My neighbor, Sheriff Logan, stepped out, tipping his hat as he walked over. "I got your message," he said, shaking my hand. "Watch the footage. Want me to escort her off, or do you want the formal charges first?" Karen looked like she'd been hit by lightning. You know him?" Logan turned to her, firm. "Ma'am, you forged legal documents, entered private land without consent, and impersonated an official. That's a full list already. You can walk to the car, or I can call for backup." "I didn't—" she started, but stopped when she saw 2 more deputies pulling up behind. That's when her knees buckled a little. Ray leaned out the cab window. "Should I still start at 1? "Nah," I said, folding my arms. "Let's give her a moment to process. This is going to hit her in stages." And then, almost as if the universe had timing of its own, one of the tent poles snapped under the wind and the whole setup tilted slightly. A row of fake flower vases toppled and smashed on the gravel. Karen turned and watched her fantasy. Wedding scene collapse like a house of cards. She whispered something under her breath. Something like, "This was supposed to be perfect." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because the truth had just bulldozed her harder than any rig ever could. Karen sat on the ground like her brain had blue-screened. Mascara streaked down one side of her face, and she kept whispering the same thing under her breath. It was supposed to be perfect. I planned it all. Sheriff Logan leaned down, next to her. "Planning ain't the problem, ma'am. Thinking you could hijack a man's property is." One of the deputies gently pulled her to her feet and started walking her toward the cruiser. That's when the bride's mother pulled up in an SUV, brakes screeching. She stormed out, heels clacking like gunfire. "What the hell is going on here?" she shouted. Karen tried to find her footing. "Mrs. McCarthy, I'm so sorry. There was a mix-up. He didn't communicate." "She's lying," I interrupted calmly, handing the flash drive to the mother. "Everything's on here. Your daughter almost got married on stolen land, without insurance, without permits, without a clue." The woman's eyes darted between me and Karen, then back to the sheriff. "Is this true?" Logan gave a slow, painful nod. Every word. She forged HOA documents, faked approval, and planned an entire wedding like she owned the place. Could have gotten your whole family sued if anything went wrong. Mrs. McCarthy's face tightened like a fist. She turned slowly to Karen. You told us this was part of the community park, that the owner was out of town. Karen's voice cracked. I was trying to help. The venue canceled last minute and I was just trying to make it work. The bride's mom stepped so close their noses almost touched. You made my daughter cry. You almost ruined the most important day of her life, and you did it with a lie. Then she slapped her. It wasn't violent, but it was sharp and final. Karen staggered back like she'd been hit with a shockwave. Her legs gave out, and this time the deputy didn't help her up. They just opened the cruiser door. Before they drove off, Karen looked at me one last time, eyes filled not with rage but fear, like she finally realized who she'd been messing with. The cruiser pulled away slowly, tires crunching over broken glass and crushed pedals. Silence fell over the ranch again. Ray finally stepped out of the truck and exhaled. Well, that escalated. I nodded. People think just because I live quiet, I'll roll over. Ray chuckled. Guess she forgot rule number 1. What's that? He grinned. Don't mess with a man who has tractors and receipts. We both laughed. But deep down I knew this wasn't over yet. People like Karen, they don't just disappear, they plot. They fester. And something told me. She had more up her sleeve. 2 days passed. The tents were gone. The arch was gone. Karen was gone. Or so I thought. I spent that morning repairing a fence line on the north end when my phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected at the front gate. I pulled up the camera feed, and my blood ran cold. It was Karen. She wasn't alone this time. A black SUV idled behind her. 2 men in cheap suits stood beside her, arms crossed like they were in some bad courtroom drama. One of them flashed a badge to the camera. It was quick, but not quick enough. I hit pause and zoomed in. Private investigator. She was trying to scare me. Again. I grabbed my keys and headed for the gate, stopping halfway when I saw them already walking up the drive like they owned it. Karen spotted me and instantly flipped the switch from smug to sweet. There he is, she said, fake smiling like we were old friends. We just need a few words, purely civil, I promise. The older suit stepped forward. Mr. Walker, my client is considering civil action based on emotional distress and damages incurred during a lawful community event. I didn't blink. Lawful? You must have missed the sheriff hauling her away in handcuffs. Karen cut in, voice sharp. The charges didn't stick. Technicality. And I have the right to pursue personal grievances. You're on my land again, I said quietly. That's not a grievance, that's trespassing. Again. She raised a manila envelope like it was a peace offering. This is a warning letter. If you destroy it or ignore it, we'll see you in court. I took it slowly, didn't open it, just stared her down. You really don't get it, do you? Karen's mask slipped. What don't I get? That I'm not scared of people like you. I've buried a wife, fought off wildfires, worked this land every day for 20 years. You think a few fake papers and hired suits are going to break me? The younger suit shifted uncomfortably. Karen opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a finger. No more talking. You've crossed too many lines. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a second envelope. Her eyes narrowed. What's that? Cease and desist, I said. Filed this morning. You step 1 foot on this ranch again and you'll be facing real legal action. Plus, a restraining order. She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. You're bluffing. I smiled for the first time. Am I? That's when Logan's cruiser rolled up again, right on cue. He stepped out slow, hand resting on his belt. You folks having another unauthorized HOA meeting here? Karen's mouth clamped shut. Logan walked over to me. You want him? Gun? I nodded. All of them. He turned to the suits. Gentlemen, you've been asked to leave. I suggest you listen unless you want to spend your afternoon answering questions downtown. They hesitated, looked at each other, then turned and walked back to the SUV without another word. Karen followed, but not before turning back one. Last time her voice low and bitter. You don't get to win forever. I didn't respond. I just watched her drive off. But inside, I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about principle now. And I had a feeling the next round would be even uglier. A week went by. Quiet. Almost too quiet. No trucks. No visits. No Karen. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally backed off. But that hope died the moment I walked into town for supplies and found a bright red sticker slapped across my truck's windshield. Unregistered commercial vehicle, subject to removal. My stomach sank. I scanned the lot. 3 more trucks were parked nearby, same size, same style, no stickers. I peeled it off and stormed into the local office to ask what was going on. The clerk, a young guy who looked barely old enough to shave, stammered through an explanation. Someone submitted a report that this vehicle's being used for unlicensed demolition and land development. There's an anonymous complaint. I laughed under my breath. Let me guess, blonde, sunglasses, clipboard? He blinked. How'd you... I didn't even wait for him to finish. I just left. When I got back home, there were 3 orange cones blocking my driveway. A fake construction notice was zip-tied to my fence. Soil test pending. Do not disturb. I ripped it off and looked around. There were no workers, no trucks, just this strange silence hanging in the air. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't attacking me loud anymore. She was trying to destroy me quietly. Paperwork, reports, red tape, death by 1,000 legal cuts. I needed help, so I made one call, to a name I hadn't said in years. Sergeant. Daniels, the voice on the line said. It's Walker, I replied. A pause. Well, I'll be damned. You alive or just mad? Both. I need a favor. He chuckled. Who we making nervous? I filled him in. Everything. The fake wedding, the arrests, the stickers, the false permits. Daniels went quiet. Then he said, You still got that camera system we installed back when your wife was running county files. Still runs better than my truck. Good. Download everything. Send it to me. I've got someone in state code enforcement who loves busting people for false permits. And if this woman is abusing HOA status or impersonating authority, we'll bury her in a paper trail so deep she won't remember her own address. I did exactly that. And the next day, something glorious happened. Karen showed up again. This time, not with suits, but with a city inspector, smiling, confident. They walked up my driveway like they had a parade permit. She handed him a folder and pointed at my barn. That structure wasn't part of the original zoning. It's clearly being used for commercial activity. I'm requesting an immediate stop work order and possible removal. The inspector nodded, then looked at me. Sir, he said, we've reviewed the zoning documents and we just need to verify. I held up my folder. Already submitted, I said, along with the drone footage, soil samples, ownership records, and the court-stamped exemption from HOA jurisdiction. The inspector blinked. Wait, what? Karen stiffened. That's not possible. I checked the... No. I cut her off, stepping closer. You thought you could bury me in fake reports, but every time you filed one, I sent a real one to real state officials. And guess what? They started looking into your HOA board. The inspector turned to her. Is your name Karen Miller? She hesitated. Yes. He pulled out a paper of his own. Then you'll be hearing from the Department of Consumer Protection. 3 counts of misrepresentation, 1 count of fraudulent zoning interference, and, pending confirmation, possible unauthorized land activity. Karen's jaw dropped. The color drained from her face. I leaned in, calm and low. You thought I was just a rancher, but I've got more connections than fences, and now, you're the one being bulldozed. The wind blew hard just then, lifting, her fake report off the clipboard and scattering it like ashes. Justicing was just getting started. Karen didn't speak. She just stood there watching her phony paperwork fly into the wind like it had never mattered. The inspector gave her one final glance, something between pity and disappointment, then turned and left without another word. I didn't say anything either. I just walked back toward the barn slowly, deliberately. Karen followed a few steps, her voice cracking. You think this is over? I stopped. No, I said, without turning. You do. That's your mistake. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with a cold cup of coffee and the sunset bleeding gold across the fields. Thought maybe I'd finally get peace. But as night fell, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Sergeant Daniels. You might want to check the local forums. I pulled up the town's neighborhood board and there it was, an anonymous post, already gaining traction. Local landowner caught operating unlicensed demolition business from residential property. Dangerous, likely armed. My name wasn't in the post, but everyone knew. The comments were worse. Saw him loading equipment at 2 a.m. once. My kids don't feel safe around that place. Typical land-hoarding lunatic. Karen had changed tactics. Again, no more fake officials, no more stickers. This time she was playing the crowd, poisoning the well. Turning the whole town against me, and it was working. The next morning I found a dead raccoon nailed to my fence post, and a note. This isn't your land. It never was. That's when something inside me snapped, not in rage, not in fear, but in resolve. I picked up the phone again, not to the sheriff, not to Daniels. I called my lawyer. File it, I said. Every charge we've got, civil harassment, property interference, defamation, impersonation. I want everything moving, fast. He hesitated. You ready for that kind of fight? I stared at the fence, the blood, the nailed-up message. I've been ready since the first fake wedding. 2 hours later, the lawsuit was filed. And not just any lawsuit, a public one. Karen would be served, by hand, in front of cameras. And then, the real twist came. Daniels messaged me again. Check the HOA financial records. I think you'll like what we found. When I opened the file, I froze. My eyes scanned line after line of transactions. Thousands of dollars, funneled from HOA dues to a private events company, owned by Karen's sister. It was fraud, embezzlement, abuse of power. And I wasn't the only one watching now, because by noon a local news van was parked at the ranch gate. And Karen? She was about to go viral for all the wrong reasons. By the time the 5 o'clock news aired, Karen's world was already crumbling. The headline said it all. HOA president under investigation for embezzlement and property harassment. Local rancher fights back. They played the drone footage, the fake wedding setup, the cease and desist. Even showed a blurry clip of Karen screaming as she was escorted off my land that first day. But the real hammer came when the anchor said, according to state documents, over $47,000 of HOA funds were funneled to an event planning company owned by the HOA president's sister, with no board approval or resident knowledge. That same company tried to host an unauthorized event on private land without a permit. Boom. Karen's name lit up the neighborhood forum like wildfire. Every homeowner who had ever gotten a bogus citation, every tenant who'd paid extra, event fees, every single neighbor she'd threatened, they were done. Screenshots flooded the feed, angry messages, calls for her resignation. People finally saw her for what she was. And I just sat on my porch, sipping fresh coffee this time. But I wasn't smiling. Not yet. Because I knew people like Karen don't go down easy. They twist, they flail, they beg, they lie. Sure enough, the next morning she showed up again, but not with fake permits, Not with suits. She came alone, hair messy, no makeup, eyes puffy. She stepped just inside the gate and held up her hands. I'm not here to fight. I didn't move. You shouldn't be here at all. I just wanted to talk, she said softly. They're going to ruin me. Good, I replied. She blinked like she wasn't expecting that. Like I was supposed to be the bigger person. Like I hadn't been harassed, lied about, and nearly arrested. I was trying to help the neighborhood, she muttered. People loved the events. I did a lot of good. I stood up. You lied. You stole. You tried to destroy my name, my land, my life. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. You used HOA funds to pay your family. You forged documents. You trespassed. And when that didn't work, you tried to make me a villain in my own town. Her shoulders sank. I just wanted control. Everything felt like it was slipping. And you didn't bow. Everyone else did. I stepped closer, calm but cold. Because I've already lost everything before. My wife, my old home in the valley. I know what real loss feels like. You were just scared of not being important. She looked down, silent. I leaned in one last time. You weren't the storm, Karen. You were the wind trying to knock down a mountain. And then I turned my back. She didn't follow. That night, the HOA board announced her removal. Charges were officially filed. A full audit began. And neighbors who'd once whispered behind my back stopped by with pies and apologies. I never asked for any of it. I just wanted my peace. And now, I finally had it. As I watched the stars rise over my land, one final thought crossed my mind. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't defend what's mine. And now, thanks to Karen, the whole world knew it. 2 weeks passed. I thought it was over. Karen was off the HOA board, facing legal heat, and I was finally getting nights without headlights pulling into my driveway. Even the local news stopped calling. For once, my ranch felt like mine again. But just when peace settled in, the final twist came. I got a letter. Not a court letter. Not a complaint. It was from a real estate company. Dear Mr. Walker, it read, we understand your property may soon be available. We'd like to offer $2.7 million for your land, contingent on zoning approval for future residential development. My chest tightened. I reread it twice. Available? I hadn't listed anything. Hadn't even talked about selling. But someone had gone ahead and told this company I was considering offers. I called the number on the letter. The guy on the other end sounded way too confident. Yes, we were informed by a prior HOA board contact that the land was likely being prepped for sale, possibly demolition ready. Who told you that? Hesitated. I can't say. I didn't need him to. Because attached to the email follow-up he sent was a scanned document. It was a forged intent to sell form, signed in my name. And in the corner of the page, barely noticeable, was a watermark from Karen's sister's company. They weren't just done with the wedding. They were planning a neighborhood expansion project. And my land, my ranch, was the final piece they needed. That wedding, the events, the pressure, it was all part of a bigger plan. And even after Karen got burned, someone else was still pulling strings. So I did the only thing left to do. I walked into town and bought something I never thought I'd need. A demolition permit. For my own barn. See, I wasn't planning on tearing it down. Not really, but I was going to send a message. Because the next day I invited the news back. Let the cameras roll, and I stood right there in front of that old barn, hammer in hand, and started knocking it down myself. Not for them. Not for the HOA. Just to prove one thing. This land is mine, and I decide what stays and what doesn't. The video went viral. 6 million views in 2 days, and buried inside every share Every comment was one line that stuck. They planned a wedding on my ranch, so I planned a demolition. By the end of the week, that real estate offer vanished. Karen's sister's company shut down its website, and the county launched a full probe into HOA-linked development projects across the district. So yeah, maybe I lost a few fence posts, but I held the line. And now? Now when people drive past this land, they don't see just a ranch. They see a fight. They see freedom. And they see what happens when the wrong people mess with the right one. On the one they never saw coming. It was late fall when I got the final piece of the puzzle. An anonymous package arrived, no return address, no note inside, just a USB stick. I plugged it into my old laptop in the barn office, half expecting it to be junk. But what popped up froze me. Video files. Dozens of them, all security footage, from inside HOA board meetings. Secret ones. Meetings where Karen and her sister pitched the development project, where they laughed about pushing old residents out, where they talked about using HOA funds to nudge people into selling. And in one clip, Karen actually said it. We get him off that land, we get the whole grid. He's the last holdout. Once he's gone, we build whatever we want. There it was, the whole game. The pressure, the lies, the wedding, the forged demolition notice, even the smear campaign. All of it. Suddenly it made sense why they came at me so hard. Why she wouldn't stop, even when the permits failed, the fake cops failed, and the news turned on her. This wasn't about me blocking one wedding. It was about me blocking a multi-million-dollar land flip. They'd been playing a long game, and they were inches from winning, until I said no. And now, with that flash drive, I had everything I needed to bury them for good. I sent a copy to the county, one to the Attorney General, and one to the news station. Didn't say a word. Just let the footage speak. By the end of that week, Karen's sister was under investigation. Her assets were frozen. Karen herself was subpoenaed again, this time not just for HOA fraud, but conspiracy to commit property theft. And the development project? Canceled. The land stayed untouched. That barn, half demolished, weathered but standing, became something else. A symbol. People started dropping by just to take pictures. The sheriff even brought his son once. Wanted him to see what's standing. Your ground looks like, he said. And standing there, boots in the dirt, wind running through the old fence posts, I finally felt it. Not revenge, not relief. Honor. Because they didn't just try to take my land. They tried to erase my right to it. And in the end, they lost everything. Just to learn a lesson I was raised on. You don't build your future on stolen ground. Winter came early that year. Cold wind, quiet skies, and snow settling soft across the fields. My land looked untouched again, pure, calm, like the storm had never happened. But every post, every tire track in the dirt, every scar on the barn told a story. I was out feeding the horses one morning when I saw something unusual near the gate. A folded note, tucked into the fence. No name, no threats this time. Just 5 words. Written in shaky handwriting. You were right. I'm sorry. No need to ask who it was. From. I didn't smile. I didn't tear it up. I just folded it back and slid it into my coat pocket. Not out of forgiveness, just closure, because I didn't fight this war to hold grudges. I fought it so people like me, quiet, honest folks who just want to live in peace, don't have to kneel to power that pretends it's law. And now that it was over, I could finally breathe. Neighbors started inviting me to their homes again. Not out of guilt, but respect. The same people who once looked at me like I was the problem now looked me in the eye and shook my hand. They'd say things like, "You reminded us what ownership means. Thanks for not backing down. You showed all of us that standing alone doesn't mean you're wrong." I didn't say much back. Never liked speeches. But I'd nod, tip my hat, and get back to the land. Because that's what mattered. Most, not headlines, not lawsuits, not even the viral clips, just this soil, this freedom, this place I call home. And if anyone ever comes knocking again, be it with papers, threats, or fake power, I've got a new sign at the front gate. Private land. Veteran owned. Mess around and find out. Because now the whole town knows. You can schedule a wedding on my ranch without asking, but I'll schedule a demolition you'll never forget.